As Dawn reported a 74% rise in headline earnings per share to 66.1 cents. Now this came as the company grew revenue by 9% to almost 4.6 billion rand. On the desk with me now is Chief Executive Derek Todd. Derek, thanks so much for coming through today. Solid numbers everywhere, and what strikes me is that in your numbers you make mention of the fact that Dawn HR has implemented appropriate plans to protect itself from to avoid strike action in the country. First of all, we've never even heard of Dawn HR experiencing strike actions. Is that the case at the company?
Dawn HR is actually the function within the group. It's a solution company that handles all our HR, IR elements, all personnel elements. So what we talk about there is, in fact, they've got 2 or 3 year multi-year agreements with labour, and in terms of agreements with pay increments. So everything's been organised well, and with the next time we will actually negotiate will be mid-year next year, 2014.
It sounds like a pretty solid plan, given the fact that strike action seems to be unfolding in many of South African sectors in particular. What kind of incentives are these as well that you've put into place? Is this more the above inflation increases or better working conditions?
Well, certainly our group has always had the principle of above average increments, and you know, it's important that you share as much as possible, or really give the perception that you are, by ensuring that people, and in different parts of the business, there are incentives put in place to motivate people.
I understand that you have an African growth strategy as well. Where exactly are you going, and what are you hoping to do there?
We've been in Africa now for 7 or 8 years. We went in some time back. It's a difficult strategy. However, over the last number of years, we've started to see the benefits of that. And the group achieved about 1.3 billion in Africa this last year, and we're going to continue doing that. We are in most countries in Africa, and our objectives are to continue to roll that out as strongly as possible.
Do you have capital reserves to expand even further into the country, and just exactly how much?
Well, we certainly will, on each case, dependent on your partners and the structure that you agree, because most entries into African countries you tend to pick up with a partner, and there's various ways of structuring the funding in the business, just dependent on each country as you go forward.
I understand revenue from your African operations grew by 12%, but there were some challenges in Botswana as well as Mauritius. Indulge us a little further there.
I think Mauritius' economy has been pretty quiet. The volumes have been at a very low ebb. And Botswana, we also found some difficulties, certainly in our manufacturing business, but not in our trading business. It was just about, you know, normal government expenditure, because, you know, many of our factories are involved in water and sanitation. So we are playing in that role, and it just depends on the spend at the given time.
Let's touch on that, the water and sanitation infrastructure in particular. Just exactly what focus or what role will Dawn be playing in that?
Well, certainly we've already got some significant orders to supply water. I'm talking mainline water supplies into any form of new development, plus upgrade and refurbishment of any form of water supply and or sanitation. Throughout
the country or province specific?
Throughout South Africa and in Africa. So we've got factories up in Africa. We've got trading companies that offer a solution for that entire product requirement.
That must bring a lot of money into the company.
Well, we certainly, and you know, we went through difficult times after 2008, and the building side of the company obviously felt the pressure, and then the infrastructure subsequent to the World Cup. And for about a year now, we've had very solid growth and volumes coming through on the infrastructure side. So you will have seen from our detail that we also had to acquire another business just to fulfill our capacities.
Let's touch on that, because your infrastructure division grew headline earnings per share by 91%. Sounds like a company and profits love story. Just exactly how did you achieve that?
I think, firstly, obviously the volumes, that's a sign that the volumes are coming through. I think the next part of it is we obviously have gone through the businesses with a fine-tooth comb, restructured them, made sure that the costs are absolutely in line, and upgraded our plant and equipment, brought in more high or large bore diameters, and you know, made sure that we're appropriate to what the market demands are currently. And as I said, for the last year and maybe a bit longer, we've actually been running at pretty nice levels.
Are those levels sustainable, though, Derek?
Well, water and sanitation is an enormous requirement in the African continent. And South Africa has got enormous problems of its own. I'm talking maintenance, refurbishment, plus new development. So we believe we positioned the company in the right space.
Also looking at your sanitary cluster, that sanitary ware cluster there, you turned that around from a loss of 21 million and now into profits of 12 million, if I'm not mistaken, to 33 million over there. How did that happen?
Once again, rationalization of cost, upgrading of plants, relocation of plants, and setting up the business in the most efficient way possible, ensuring that your yields are right, making sure that all your input prices are the best you can possibly get. And we also set about strategies to make sure we eliminated as many of our competitors as possible.
How do you do that?
Well, you put pressure on them, and ultimately, there's now two real main players left in the acrylic bath business and in the ceramic business. A lot of imports come in, but there are two players there too. And we've got a good business model, and we think that it's going to work for us. As the new residential building plans passed, as you've seen, they're up about 18%. So the trends are all looking right.
Derek, just before we close off with, where do you see new growth areas in the company for the next year?
I certainly see us growing the business, firstly, as I've outlined, in Africa, and I think without question with opportunities in South Africa, more of the same type of bolt-on opportunities, as well as the increase, as I outlined, in the residential spend as it picks up and the consumer is deleveraged as the housing price increases.